We are also watching a key speech today from Federal Reserve Governor Lael Brainard. She's speaking in Chicago and will be watched closely in terms of any suggestion of when interest rates will start moving. Joining me right now is the CEO of SunTrust, Bill Rogers, joining us on that, and also a conversation the company has opened up about financial strength and long-term stability. Bill, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Maria. Thanks for having me.
I want to get to your campaign of helping Americans get financially fit, but let me start on this issue of interest rates and the economy in general. Sure. How would you characterize the backdrop? Do you think we might see interest rates move higher this year, perhaps the next meeting in September?
Well, if we look at the two things of employment and inflation, I think we're seeing. I mean, we can argue about how much is in the actual pool, but employment's improving, and we certainly see that particularly in our markets. And then on the inflation side, I think that also starts translating into a little wage inflation. So I think the data is starting to stack up in favor of a rate increase, whether it's next week or later this year. I think it's coming.
All right, so that would obviously be a positive, given that we've seen no movement whatsoever, and rates are negative in some places in the world right now. How would you characterize loan demand right now, Bill?
You know, loan demand is positive. We see good activity. That may be unique to us and our markets, but we see good activity.
And good activity in terms of compared to a year earlier, things have picked up. You're seeing a difference?
Well, I think it's actually been pretty steady. I mean, if we think about this recovery, it's been sort of one step at a time, and it's been sort of two steps forward, one step back, and I think we're sort of still in that mode. Nothing that's appreciably better now than it was a year ago, but it's also not appreciably worse. I think we're just seeing that steady, solid improvement.
So what do you do at SunTrust at this point in terms of moving the needle on economic growth? Do you need to get bigger, Bill, in terms of scale?
No, we think we've got all the scale we need. We think we've got the products and the capability to serve our clients, and that's what we look towards. Do we have the scale to do the things we need to do from a regulatory standpoint, and do we have the things that we need to do from a client standpoint? I think we're in great shape from a scale standpoint.
Now, you've taken a real stand in terms of helping Americans get financially fit. You've got a campaign called On Up, which you kicked off at the Super Bowl earlier this year. Your numbers show 1 in 4 millennials remain financially dependent on their parents, and you've got 5 tips to get financially fit. Let's talk about that. The first tip, you call it prescribe.
Well, we have a number of things, and we've got some tips that we think people ought to follow. We did a survey which showed that 75% of Americans are under some kind of financial stress. 40% of Americans don't have $2,000 saved for an emergency. When you switch to millennials, that's 60%. 1/3 of Americans don't have anything saved for retirement. So our recovery is a bit fragile from that standpoint. So what we wanted to do is just engage the country in a conversation about that. We've had a lot of conversation about, physical well-being, and we want to have an equal conversation about financial well-being. Yeah. And so we have a number of things that we sort of put out there. They're not all inclusive, but it starts with tracking spending. Making sure that you know what you're spending your money on. There are lots of apps and budget tools, and certainly on our onup.com conversation, there are lots of tools and resources to use. Yeah. Establishing values. What's important to you? Is it saving for a deposit on your home? Is it starting a college fund? Whatever it may be that are your particular values. And then back to the other earlier statistic is start an emergency savings fund. We think that's just critical. And at least $2,000 for the unforeseen emergency that might come up.
Yeah, because life throws you curveballs, right? Yeah, life throws you curveballs, and you need that wiggle room.
And the curveballs are usually healthcare related. That something happens to you, your partner, your spouse, your children, your parents, and it's maybe as simple as something happens to your car, and you can't get to work. So that emergency fund is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, having these goals is really important, just to sort of set an agenda for yourself. You also say talk to your partner about savings goals. What expenses can you eliminate?
Well, it's really interesting. When people start down the process of figuring out where they spend money, they always find opportunities to save. And whether it may be I'm eating out too much, or I'm spending too much money on clothes or transportation, or maybe we could carpool. Right. All the different things, when you track expenses, people universally come up with an opportunity to find some type of savings and some type of opportunity to maximize their spending.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. You got to start pulling in the spending and start creating emergency savings and putting more money away. Bill, one of the issues for people is trust. People are not sure who to trust when it comes to their money. Look, last week we got a mind-blowing, major story when we heard that Wells Fargo fired 5,300 people because they were creating accounts, making up accounts just to boost their salaries. Have you ever seen something like that?
Well, I really don't want to comment on another financial institution, but I think it all starts with what we talked about before, is it starts with a conversation. You really just have to understand what a client's needs are. Every client's needs are unique. There are lots of things they need. There are lots of things they don't need. So I think it's critical just to start that conversation. And we clearly want banks to be part of that conversation and part of that dialogue.
And are you seeing this resonate with people? You see millennials getting more interested in this, trying to get a hold of their financial future?
We do, and it's important, and the timing is never more important than right now. I mean, just simple things like participating in your company's 401k plan, if they have one. A company's match, it's 100% interest. I mean, where can anyone get 100% interest? So it's important to start early and create that dialogue. And we think millennials are starting, but we want to really encourage them to start with a little more vigor.
Yeah, I think that's a great point in terms of the 401k, that's for sure. And thanks for opening up the conversation, Bill. Good to have you on the program. Thank you.
Well, Maria, thank you, and thank you for helping with this conversation. You're an important voice.
Appreciate it. Bill Rogers, CEO at SunTrust there. Still